Welcome to the second ICG webinar. Hopefully, for those panelists who are there making a noise, if they could mute themselves, that would be much appreciated, please. And welcome to the rest of you. You're in good company. The first webinar had an audience of over 400 people. This one has got almost a number as well. And you'll see from looking at the panel that there are some, how can I put it? There's a satisfactory amount of grey hair and experience in the room, which is absolutely tremendous. And just to say that the questions at the end always seem to come in a rush. So if you have got a question you want to put to the panelists, or indeed, well, the panelists obviously consist of some prop tech guys and some estate agents. The estate agents, hopefully you'll recognise. I'm not going to introduce them all because you've had a chance to look at all the stuff in the invites that's come out, so you'll know who they are. And you'll get a chance to ask them questions. So get your questions in early. If we can't answer any questions, we will attempt to answer those when we send you out the recording of the webinar. Very strange times, we all know that. If you read the trade press at the moment, there could be anything from estate agents claiming they're doing lots and lots of business with virtual tours to those who, if you click on Rightmove, say we're closed until the lockdown finishes, and there's everything in between. So understanding what you can and can't do is obviously a very important part of what we're trying to talk about here. And the ICG who run this, the Innovation Collaboration Group, are making a really good fist of offering you as agents the best in class sort of prop tech alternatives. And for a lot of you, and for a lot of us in the prop tech business, it's not about being in competition with each other. This is something that Pete Rollings, who you'll see here, told me the other day. We're not in competition with each other, we're in competition with the status quo. And a lot of us have been around a long time. Frankly, I was around at the end of the oil shock in the 70s. I've been around that long, and I've seen all sorts of things happening since then. We've seen the 10-year recession from 88 to 98, dot-com crisis, September the 11th, 9/11, the financial crash. Whenever this happens, people turn around and say, oh, things are going to change. They're never going to be the same again. But I think this is the first time that the whole world has been in the same situation and has really been forced to not only examine, but also use new methods for working. And obviously the fact that you're following us here on Zoom, I'm probably, if you're like me, you're almost bored of using video conferencing software. So we're talking here about the status quo and how that can be changed and how you might want to use it. So let's maximize the time we've got with the guys here on the screen and kick the ball off with a question for, well, I mentioned Peter, so let's start with Peter. So Peter, should I still employ the same sort of people on the same sort of package? I think one of the questions that a lot of people are wanting to answer. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the key going forward, isn't it? I think many will. I think it'll sort of they'll drift back into the same old. In fact, most estate agents don't take advantage of things, and they just carry on doing what they do, and they do fine. Great. I think the good ones will really start to think out of the box, and I think there is a big box to think out of. I remember coming back from Australia when I first went there about 15 years ago and thinking, I'm going to change the way UK agency operates to the Australian system. And the Australian system is, if you don't know it, you should look into it. It reduces your outgoings, your costs, your upfront costs massively, and really focuses on the quality of the individual who knows the area and is able to make a lot more commission. You get $2-3 million agents in Australia who do extremely well and make a lot of money. Now, in my experience, both at Foxtons and M&P, we had a good mix of people at the lower end, i.e. entering the business, just chucking shit at a wall and hoping something sticks. And we had much more experienced people who were very good. I would suggest possibly going forward, you sort of got rid of the lower end people to a large extent. I would guess if you're working in a town, you should be raiding your competitors for their best people. And in order to do that, you have to make the opportunity for them immense. There is no reason that estate agents in this country shouldn't be extraordinarily well paid if they're successful. And I think the system of payment in the UK for agents is is not good enough to really attract the best people into the business. Some of the best people I've ever employed, both at M&P and at Foxtons, were outside of the business, and they had much more life experience, and they came in and I paid them a bit more, but they really, really achieved. I would guess coming out of this, there'll be a lot of unemployment and a lot of great people will lose their jobs. And I would really look much more widely at the business and attract people who really know what they're doing in terms of life experience and able to interact with people, rather than some 21-year-old who's never bought a house, doesn't really know what's going on, but is just making outgoing calls and trying to get people in. I think you could do better than that. And I would say they have something in America and Australia called debit credit, and it's like you're guaranteeing them at a level of a basic, so they don't live on nothing. Let's say 40 grand, but they have to pay it back as they do deals. But they get between 35 and 55% of the deal that they bring in, more if they actually bring it in and then sell it. Just a tiny story on my son, who has just started a recruitment company, actually in America. He reduced his senior people by half, and his less senior people by total took away their basics. Two of them out of the three of no basics have done more deals in the last 6 weeks than they've done in the last 6 months. So it really focuses the mind and really puts the emphasis on the individual to get up there and do something. And frankly, if you're paid 15, 20 grand basic plus 10% of the commission, do you bother? That you sort of do bother, but I think you can get a much better quality person.
Well, I think it sounds like your son's learning from the master. There's no the fact that you used to be called Pistol Pete, I think he's obviously learning. A couple of other guys. I mean, obviously, Asad, you're running a much leaner, smaller agency. Perhaps a lot of our viewers will identify perhaps with the way you're running your business. How do you see things changing?
Yeah, I echo what Peter said. I think the old structure of negotiator, valuer, manager, I think it's always been done like that. And is it necessarily the right way to do it? I don't think it is anymore. We have sort of been reviewing every aspect of our business, and we're probably thinking along the same lines as Peter, as really, really good individuals who are probably backed up by a support team. Who would look after the sort of, because if you look at, for instance, a negotiator's time, I reckon 80% of it is spent on non-productive tasks. So what we do, if we eliminate that and get a support team to do that, along with some kind of technology.
What do you call non-productive, Asad?
The endless phone calls. People, obviously, we have a structure in place where you have your call out. But if you actually look at the stats for call-outs, how many people actually pick up the phone and how many conversations are actually had? Does a negotiator necessarily have to do that? And could technology take care of some of it, or could a support team take care of some of it?
Well, I think that's what we. Well, I think. Thanks, Asad. I think that's what we're here to find out today, isn't it? Really, as to whether the and answer some questions with people. And I couldn't possibly leave this topic without bringing Simon in just to get his opinion on it. Unmute yourself, Simon.
Mute myself. Right.
There we go.
I think that most of the better agents have been moving towards better quality staff in any event, and that's been key to their success. I do think that there is a place for youngsters within the market. I do find that the majority of my managers who are particularly successful have actually been trained in-house. So I think that there is definitely still a place for training your own people as well as bringing people with life experience. But I think we need to utilize our good staff better so that they can earn more and we can cut down our costs, because moving forward, that's going to be, I think, Ed, your original comment, going through the chronology, we're always looking towards the good times, but if we look over the last 50 years, there have been a lot more crap times than there have been good times. So maybe we should consider the crap times as the norm and look to succeed in those, and then reap the benefits in these small pockets of where things explode.
No, okay. Well, I think it's good to get the voice of experience there, and a lot of people won't recognise that there've been a lot worse times over the last 10, 20 years than there have been good times, and that is true for a lot of people. But what people who are looking at this want to know is how they can be helped, or what can be done. I mean, a lot of people have talked about having better paid employees in their company, and perhaps outsourcing some of the more mundane tasks, and that's very much what we've got here, is some people to help us with this sort of thing. So let's go around the room here and talk to one or two of the people. We'll come back to the agents in the room, Asad and Simon, to get them to answer a couple of questions in a minute. But one of the questions that's very, very difficult for people to understand is how they prospect. How are you going to look for new customers at the moment? So we've got Amy here from Sprift. So perhaps, how can I prospect during this time, Amy? How would you answer that?
Sensitively, I think is the honest answer. I think it's been really interesting over the last week to week and a half. It seems to have sort of shifted. So talking to the sort of Sprift community over the last sort of week or so, it seems to have sort of shifted a little bit. And now agents are at home, they're settled, they've got their routine set up. They're finding that their clients have as well, and they're more and more open to actually now talking about their future moves, what they're going to do, the property market, which is obviously a huge topic of discussion at the moment anyway, generally. And they're getting some really, really great feedback from sort of different approaches, different ways you can do it. And obviously you certainly don't want to be the hard sell estate agent, and certainly back in the day, I was one of those that was, when you put your house on the market and when are you going to change agents? When are you coming on with me? You can't be like that at the moment. But what you can do is offer a service. And along with Sprift and a lot of the other ICG members, we do offer fantastic services that they can pass on through to their clients. So we launched our key facts for buyers literally just as we were going into lockdown. And it's been a really, really great example of actually a service that agents have kind of grasped, and not necessarily using it for the very obvious sort of route of actually it provides all the key facts for the buyers with regards to any property in the UK, but it actually provides a service that estate agents are now offering to their clients to help with their property search. So what they're finding is a lot of their clients are kind of now at home looking at the portals, looking at properties online, and trying to get a better idea of their future move. And to be able to offer clients help with their property search has gone down really, really well. And that could be someone that's on the market with another agent. It can be past valuations. It can be what I always used to call VIP applicants. So anybody that you've got registered that's looking in your area but has got a house to sell in your patch. So offering a service to them during this time is a really nice touch. And they've had some fantastic feedback from that. And I'm sure along the lines of, with Dataloft and Akaboom, they're finding the same. So with Akaboom sort of market updates, Dataloft's sort of their data market updates as well, people are now starting to sort of get interested again in the property market and what they're going to be doing later on this year. There's stacks of people seemingly waiting to move. For agents to actually add a service to their toolkit and offering to send out market updates, buyer guides for individual properties they're looking at online, giving them all the facts and data, they're getting a really, really good response. And a lot of our clients in the Sprift community have already got a pipeline of instructions ready to go. So they've got promises and even some have actually got signed terms and conditions and lined up instructions so that when we do come out of lockdown, they'll gradually start to then get these properties live. I
mean, part of the issue for agents at the moment is trying to find, they may or may not have identified some potential listings for themselves going forward. But we've got someone sitting here in front of some shameless advertising from Akaboom, and obviously they're talking about online valuations. So, I mean, our online, Susanna, are online valuations here to stay? They seem to be the way forward at the moment. Do you think they're likely to stay?
Great question. To echo what Amy said there, the last few weeks have been really changing, and we've had a lot of inquiries and people buying Akaboom. Even yesterday, we had 2 new people kind of sign up to encourage more online valuations to go into their diary. So initially to promote that, and then kind of using the tool to do online valuation, share the screen, show comparables, and really upsell themselves online. But the feedback we've been getting there is it's been very successful for them. In fact, I interviewed Nicol & Co. Just recently, Matt Nicol there, who is converting at the same ratio that he was doing market appraisals face-to-face as he now is online, which is kind of incredible. He's doing half the amount of valuations he was, which is still great, but what he is doing is that conversion rate still there. So that begs the question, do they all need to be kind of on site, or can we continue with that afterwards? Some of my other clients that are kind of, I would say, proactive and progressive and still, again, to echo Amy there, with offers and kind of contracts signed, are already investing in kit so that when they do go back, they can offer a bit of a hybrid model in terms of offering maybe an initial online market appraisal and then followed up by an on-site one. I mean, I would say with these, it's always good to do your due diligence. You should never really be relying on the measurements from the vendors and the photos. So although the times we're in right now, we might be listing properties, but I would suggest as soon as we get out there, and we can go and do that just to kind of check that yourself. However, yeah, I think that they are here to stay. People will be offering that approach. At the end of the day, you've got to be where your customer is, and we've never been more video friendly. I think we'd have got there in 10 years, but this has pushed us up the pipeline.
I mean, I think it's very encouraging to hear that one or two of your clients are, running at 50% online valuations of what they would normally be doing is quite encouraging. I'd be fascinated to hear from other people listening. I mean, you'll see Ian White's here up in the corner. Well, he is in my corner. I don't know where he is on your screen, but Ian is very much following what's going on Facebook Live, where there are a whole load more people interacting with us. And if you hear some stuff here and you want to make a point, that's your place to go and do it. Is there anything in particular, Ian, at this stage? Probably a bit early, or is there anything you want to say at this stage?
Yeah, there's a question coming for Peter Rollings and for Simon on their remarks about the type of people to employ and the wage structures, and that is, would you echo those comments? It's from Trevor Hames, but would you echo those comments, and how would you apply the same strategy or the same view to the lettings part of the business?
It's probably more one for Simon in terms of the current market at the moment. I wondered what you'd think about that, Simon. Not for 1 second saying that Peter doesn't have an opinion on it.
I'm sure Peter does. The lettings market, I don't think, is dissimilar. I think that, in fact, even more so, because the relationship-driven scenario that we're talking about in sales is even more intense with lettings, and there are even more touch points for you to continue that relationship and grow it. So I think that the potential in lettings is just as great as in sales, and we've been looking to do that for some time, and are doing that with our better quality managers and staff. Yeah,
no, I think lettings has always been known as a less emotional business. So from that perspective, the opportunity for tech to engage is clearly much more obvious, and it's a much more it's a more fast-moving business, and it's no great surprise to see that a lot of prop tech businesses have made a lot more impact with the lettings sector than they have yet on the sales sector. So it'd be interesting to hear what the sort of mix is of people that are listening, whether they're sales, lettings. I would imagine a lot of them are sales, because that's where the real problem is. Certainly, I'm still a non-exec at Douglas & Gordon, as I was at a board meeting yesterday, and certainly the lettings business is still pretty active. And I mean, you will rent a property from looking at it via an online viewing, quite possibly, whereas I don't necessarily think that's here to stay on the sales side. We can come to that a little bit later. I mean, talking of that marketing side of it, obviously we've got another grey hair, massively experienced individual with Lee down here from Focal Agent. I mean, obviously, I don't know what you think, Lee, about property marketing, whether that's going to be different. I mean, obviously, Focal Agent has a big range of offers they can make. Do you think things are going to change a lot?
Yeah, I think definitely in the short term, there's been a huge acceleration in meetings just like this one, and people's willingness to engage in a virtual environment. And I think that will be very relevant to property. But I think what's going to be really interesting is that I got a feeling that this will be driven by agents. Agents' desire to interact more effectively with customers. Just to pick up on Abi's point on prospecting, what's been fascinating about the conversations we've had with agents is their engagement during a smart viewing and their ability to interact whilst they're sharing visual content with potential buyers. isn't necessarily always about the property that they're being shown. It's about that opportunity to build a relationship and extract a valuation opportunity or a mortgage appointment opportunity, or just developing a relationship in a really early stage to qualify who the hot prospects are. And I think the natural acceleration of the review of business models right now will mean that agents will start to ask themselves questions, as Azad referred to, in terms of, well, what are the low value tasks? How can we do them more effectively? How can we add value for our customers? Why do we want to arrange a viewing when a buyer phones to have a conversation? We then phone the seller, we speak to the buyer, we follow the viewing up. We tend to give the seller some feedback. 5 pretty low value calls in terms of the impact that is driven, versus 1 really high value prospect engagement that allows us to develop a relationship with a future customer. So I think virtual environments are definitely here to stay. We'll see them in all sorts of industries moving forward, and property will be no different. I think it will naturally be more commercially visible in lettings, because I do think we will have people make decisions on whether they let a house in high volumes based upon virtual viewings. But I think the agents will drive a lot of value out of virtual viewing conversations and be able to extract a lot of future business.
Yeah. Sorry, Amy, I think you had your hand up there. Did you want to make a point?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, actually, it's interesting what Lee's just been saying, because I had a very interesting conversation with one of my fairly large clients yesterday. They're 25 plus branches, and they are actually going to introduce and implement doing virtual viewings first before they do any kind of physical viewing again. So for exactly the same reasons that Lee's just pointed out there, that they're going to can first kind of viewings initially. They're going to have a video call with the client, qualify them over a video call, show them the property virtually, and then if the client still likes it, then arrange the physical viewing. And it's just reiterating completely what Lee's just said there, and it's interesting that conversation.
I think one of the things that's always been the case, and people, certainly I would have thought that the vast majority of our listeners and watchers here will be probably smaller agencies. People always know that it's the large corporate agencies. You've only got to look at the figures from Countrywide a couple of years ago, when I think it was 43%, or for every pound they made in estate agency services, they made, I think, 41p out of referrals, mortgages, etc., etc. And we know that the smaller agents have always found it very, very difficult to monetize. I think, Peter, even when you were at Marsh & Parsons, it was still always a very, very difficult thing to monetize that side of the business, wasn't it?
Virtually impossible. It's I made the point that it was very hard for the salesman to sell into London people who, frankly, have the vast majority have either got mortgages already or got a family lawyer and that sort of stuff. And I hate to say it, but our average fee was £18,000. So to put that at risk by pissing off a potential buyer or anybody for the sake of, I don't know, 400 or 500 quid from a conveyancing firm, or £1,000 from a financial services firm, was just ridiculous. So I didn't try too hard, but I know at lower ends, when you have an average fee of £1,500, £2,000, that is absolutely essential to your ongoing business.
Yeah. Look, I just think, Ed, in terms of so much of the online visual content that's available is an agent-free experience, and so many of our customers are spending huge amount of time looking at properties online, and they're just missing out from that agent's expertise and that ability to understand that one side of the road is more valuable because of the school catchment area or the environment that it backs onto, and I just think the opportunity now for agents to add genuine value with a human interaction at the right stage, because there'll be less physical visits, and I think the physical visits will be consumer driven to start with as well. There are a lot of people that won't want to go back out into physical environments unless they're necessary, but that will be better for agents that think about how they can build those relationships, and of course it's going to be different in London, where I'd much rather the agents were focusing on the £18,000 fee that they could extract than it will be in lower value average priced properties, where the ability to extract all those additional revenue opportunities are really quite exciting as well.
Well, I mean, estate agents are going to have to look at every revenue opportunity coming out of this. We all know that. And, my business, Vuber, has been getting involved. We've been talking, Lee, about the opportunity to have Vuber's doing these virtual tours, these smart viewing tours. It's definitely becoming something the agents are talking about. But given that they need to...
Just interestingly there, Ed, as well, we have spoken with Sprift about agents having, that extra information that can be presented to a viewer as part of a journey that feels a much better experience, supported
Absolutely.
by you, as you know, in the conversations that we've had.
Yeah.
But that ability for estate agents to think outside the box, as Peter referred to, around what a new journey that's going to be genuinely value adding to the consumer and differentiating for the customer, that's the sort of opportunity that's going to exist in the environment that we face over the next 6-12.
Well, it would be genuinely useful for people watching this to go to the ICG approved website, because, I mean, you mentioned Sprift. I mean, at Vuber, we're doing that. We're putting Sprift reports on, so that every viewer who goes to a property will have a Sprift report. I mean, there's so much that people can do to collaborate, and that's what we're all here to do. But talking about opportunities for enhancing the way you can maximize revenue coming out of this, one of the other things that the smaller agents have often been very bad at doing is engaging with house builders, new homes, this sort of thing. They find it very difficult. And one of the guys sitting here, Kevin Ellis, has obviously done an awful lot to try and empower small agents and the way they can engage with builders and developers. So, I mean, Kevin, where do you see the opportunities for estate agents with house builders right now and over the coming months as we come out of lockdown?
I think this is an amazing time for an agent right now, particularly an independent. Give you a quick background from the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks. We've been talking to all of the volume house builders, and what's been really interesting is just how neglected those house builders have been by the corporate agents, which have furloughed sort of very deep into their businesses. So, interesting, obviously the news this week, more and more house builders going back. We were analysing through some data we take from Sprift about the stock position in the UK with the house builders. And that stock's got to be shifted. So you haven't got that sort of dilemma at the moment of a vendor. Are they going to accept a viewing? Are they sort of doing a virtual valuation or whatever? These guys have got a lot of stock to shift. And I think it's perfect time for an agent to go and maximise it.
Yes, because I mean, developers and house builders don't really have the luxury of saying, no, we'll wait. They have to get rid of their stock. So they are a great target, aren't they?
Yeah, we found, in the last 5 weeks, there's a couple of agents in particular, just through some work we've done, which have been packaging up bulk deals. So that's taking a small firm with only 1 or 2 offices, but, have nurtured the relationship with a house builder in a particular region. They've gone off, picked off 5 units on one site, 5 on another, 6, etc. And we've seen deals done at 80 grand worth of fees for one agent, 60, a whole sort of raft of them. And it's because they've just sort of grabbed it by the bull by the horn. They've made the call. Now's never been a better time to actually get hold of house builders and engage in proper dialogue. And largely that starts from asking the question around, well, what are their land requirements? So this might sound a bit of an odd one, but on one hand, we're asking them what land they want to buy. But at the same time, if they're not going to get their numbers in from unit sales, we're seeing a lot of land that some of those volume house builders and even the smaller house builders own. They're flipping that just to get the return in. So there's
it's definitely a way for the smaller agents, perhaps those listening to or watching, to be able to engage. I mean, certainly the Land and New Homes Network is a fantastic way for people to multiply the effect of what they're doing. So I think that's great. Let's come back to the agency side of it for a little bit, because there are so many people who will be wondering what to do, and they'll be looking to people. I mean, Simon, you've been around some time. You're considered to be someone who is at the sort of, I won't say cutting edge, but you're successful, have always been seen to be successful, and people see your face around the place. So how are you handling the transition now? I mean, into the situation you're in now, and how do you think you're going to handle things coming out of lockdown?
I don't think that we're quite in transition yet. I think that, well, as far as we're concerned, we've got about 28% of our staff still working. The rest have been furloughed. Those that are working have been connecting with our vendors and landlords and making sure that we are not leaving them watching Sky News concerned and making their own decisions about which way the market's going. I think that there will be a difficult transition from lockdown to the new norm, because I don't think that the government are just going to switch things off. It's one of the places where what Kevin was saying is integral. If as an agency you have new homes on your books, that's where you can start, because viewings will be considerably easier in an empty house that no one's living in. Moving that forward, it's going to be a case of trying to understand what one can and can't do. Are we going to have a situation where vendors will go out and agents will go in to do viewings with everybody masked and gloved up, and then leave the house for the people to come back in? That's how we think it will be. And I think that when we get closer to that, we can move that forward. I think it is integral that all agents, and just a little word of advice for small agents who may not believe that they have a right to claim money from the council, the £10,000 and £25,000 which is transferred direct into your account that estate agents weren't part of in the original tranche. When we were brought in under the rates holiday, we were also became eligible to claim, I believe, the £25,000 per branch or 10,000 depending on the rateable value. Now that should give agents an influx of cash that maybe they don't know that they could have had, that will allow them to take that slower and be able to unfurlough people in stages.
Okay, well that's helpful, particularly the last point there. Very practical. Thanks for that, Simon. Ian, anything coming in that you want to bring up on that's coming in from Facebook Live where people are urgently wanting to ask questions?
Yeah, we've definitely got a couple of questions that I'm going to come to. I just wanted to reiterate the importance of, I think, new homes and other must-sell business that's going to be generated as a result of the climate we're coming into. Certainly during my time at Romans, when we were in a more challenging time, the ability for us to switch our focus to the people that must sell was a major factor in our success. So new homes builders are at the very top of that pile. If they've got stock properties, they have to sell them. Nowadays, they even have to pay more taxes once the roof goes on, etc. That wasn't there in my day. So simply just buttoning down a new home site and waiting for the market to improve isn't an option. So I do think new homes are an area where agents should be looking at and getting the right expertise and plugging into the right people to understand that marketplace and how to talk to them. But let me give you some questions online. I've just got one question regarding the type of staff stroke. Well, really a comment about, is it more a case of changing staff or is it just changing your business model? That's just a comment from Kevin Shaw down in Croydon. I've got an interesting question though for the panel from Alex Willis, which is, does the panel believe agents should target their managers stroke negotiators for cross-selling referrals, i.e. conveyancing, mortgages, online auctions, solicitors, etc., or do they believe that's something that they should employ a data mining person stroke team or outsource that has that responsibility? So in terms of generating cash, do you do that internally through targeting and driving behaviours, or do you outsource? I just thought that was an interesting question and very relevant to now. I don't know who you want to ask that to, Ed.
Well, Simon's offering his services, so let's get a quick answer for you, Simon, then we'll see whether someone else wants to talk.
Let someone else talk. It's okay. Go on.
Well, that's fine. Lee, you had your hand up. What do you think?
I think it will vary, and there's definitely different emotional sentiment around selling additional revenue products. As Peter refers to, if your average fee is £18,000, you don't want to let a £500 add-on get in the way. So I think there'll be different solutions in different places. Certainly, running businesses in and around Birmingham, the additional revenue was a very significant part of the total revenue. Average fee probably £2,000, and you can almost double your revenue by doing a good job with conveyancing and financial services. And I think for me, when it's such an intrinsic part of what you do, is that having good quality agents that can build good quality relationships with their customer and introduce the right products at the right time with the right intentions is a really important solution. The the outsourced solution to additional revenue. For me, it's not as brand friendly to have somebody interact outside of a transaction just to connect with a secondary product. But you can work really hard on that customer experience, and as long as your customer journeys are built in the right way and supportive of the brand, then that there are going to be occasions where that outsourcing of that is definitely appropriate, and it won't distract your people from the key challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis. So for me, the answer is both of those, but it has to fit within your brand, it has to fit within your customer journey, and it's got to be genuinely value-adding for your consumers.
Yeah, and I think sorry, Simon, go ahead.
Yeah, as far as targeting referrals is concerned, it very much depends what you're targeting for. I have to agree with Peter that you're cutting your nose sometimes to spite your face, but it depends what impact it's going to have on the transaction. We've found very often that having friendly solicitors or solicitors that are happy to work with us to get the deal through, rather than a solicitor that we've never worked with before, can actually impact on the speed and whether or not the deal goes through at the end. The same goes for the mortgage side to a degree as well. Having a friendly mortgage person who can keep you in touch with what's actually happening so that you can speed things along can impact the actual deal. So it's a case of whether it's for revenue or whether it's actually to make sure that your deals are going through quicker and better. So there's two parts that you have to balance there.
Yeah, no, I think most agents probably listening do understand that there's always a balance. I mean, certainly when I was at Douglas and Gordon, I found the idea of going outside people's preferred networks was always very difficult just to make money, and it was always. But I was more in Peter's camp there than perhaps some others. Okay, well, one of the issues that people have at the moment is how to jump up and down with your hand in the air, shouting me, 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 getting ready to come out of this and trying to get attention. So one of the people we haven't spoken to so far, Rory, from Dataloft. Obviously, Dataloft very good at providing just spectacular information about areas where people are living, where the agents operate, etc., etc. I mean, how would you enable an agent to become to stand out better and keep the momentum, and then keep that momentum going beyond the end of the CV19 crisis?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. I mean, we are absolutely wowed by our clients who have just grabbed this sort of opportunity, and they haven't sat back, they haven't rested on their laurels. They're out there, keeping the conversation going. And how are they doing that? I mean, it's interesting, going back to a point Lee made earlier about, how will marketing be different? I mean, there's actually been a change and shift that we've noticed since we started Dataloft 10 years ago, where, back then it was only the likes of Savills who were able to kind of show off their market expertise and their market knowledge, and they've now got a team of 25 people that do that. But there's been a real momentum that we've seen of more and more agents who want to change the way they do their marketing by providing relevant, useful information to people. And there's nothing more relevant and useful, as Amy and Susanna will agree as well, than sharing with people throughout this period what is happening with the market. Now, it is really difficult, and it's too early to say what is happening with the market, but you can share we've got lots of subscribers who are sharing insights across social media, who are sending out market reports, who are keeping up to date. We're kind of doing weekly updates on how is the market faring in relation to COVID-19. They can share that with their clients. They can email it out. So they're very much they're putting content on their website. They're putting blogs on there, and they're showing people that they're not being pushy. They're not being necessarily salesy. They're still there for clients. They want to share information with them that they'll find useful and relevant. And the big point is that you have to stay front of mind throughout this whole period, because at some point there is likely to be pent up demand out there. And if you're the agents that kind of gone to sleep compared to the agent that's been sending out emails every week, keeping your website up to date, keeping your social media channels up to date, you're going to be the one that's front of mind and that they're going to get in touch with. So So yeah, it's very much, we're amazed. Our subscriber have really bought into that ethos of keep that conversation going. But if you can keep that conversation going with really relevant and useful information that they actually really want to receive, then it's even more powerful.
Yeah, no.
And obviously, sorry, going beyond COVID-19, you've got to keep that going as well. There's going to be a lot of people who will want reassured, who want to be convinced to put their property on the market. And they'll have read so much information over the last few months that they'll want to make informed decisions as well. So if you're that agent that can keep them up to date with the market and really demonstrate that you know your stuff.
I mean, Kevin had his hand up. I'll come to you in a second, Kevin, but I think it's incredibly important. And I think a lot of people watching this will understand that the first couple of weeks after March the 23rd, people were just felt like they've been hit by a freight train. And over the last week, and I think Amy and Suzanne both mentioned this, that they've been beginning to get inquiries from people saying, well, what can we do? What do we do? People now in that stage, now is the time to be engaging with people really quite heavily. And I think I couldn't believe yesterday looking through Rightmove that some of the customers that I was asking questions to on Rightmove still had pages up there that were saying, we're closed down effectively while this is going on, get back to us. I just think it's time to move out of that. And sorry, Kevin, you had your hand up. Do you want to make a point about what Rory was saying?
I think just sort of echoing Rory's point there, obviously he's more going after sort of the vendor and buyer market. From the house builder's point of view, I think they're definitely craving confidence from somebody who's got their feet on the ground in a local marketplace. So I think supporting with what the Spriff data, the data loft stuff, that all sort of adds to the strong thought leadership, I think, at the moment that an agent should really be delivering. And just picking back to something that Ian said, I think, again, you've got to put yourself, in the mindset of a house builder. If I'm running a regional office out of Coventry, yet my sites are splattered all across Warwickshire or wherever they are, I'm not in Stratford-on-Avon on a particular day or wherever it may be. So that sort of sentiment that the agent can really give confidence, particularly if I'm being a house builder that's been direct sell, if the agents have really been engaging with their client base over the last 5-6 weeks, that mood in the camp is really what they want to get hold of. So I think really supported by what Rory and Amy have both said around that is going to be quite key.
I mean, I think coming back to this thing of after March the 23rd, people were down for 2 weeks thinking what's going on. Let's talk to Asad for a second, because you're an agent on the ground. I mean, how has this period panned out for you? Was that first 2 weeks panic? Were you already planning in that 2 weeks? And how are you planning how have you been reviewing it, and what do you think you will do differently afterwards?
Yeah, we the first 2 weeks were sort of quite tough. We were fortunate that most of our systems were cloud-based anyway, so very, very quickly we were able to get everyone working from home, up and running. So in terms of the actual experience to the customer, it wasn't really that different. They could still ring us, we could still pick up the phone, we could still deal with inquiries. So not a lot changed there, apart from people weren't physically in the office. Moving forward, what will we be doing differently? I suppose one of the things we have done is we've kept in touch with the community. We are very much a small community-focused agency, so we ramped up our social media. We've been dropping off food parcels. We've been getting involved with the local food bank. So just keeping that up, using stuff like Spriff and Data Loft and things like that to keep sending out very, very relevant, valuable information to our people, and just staying in touch, really. And then as and when the market starts to come back, we'll just start to ramp that up.
Yeah, well, there's plenty to be positive about here. We know this has been a horrendous situation. It's particularly depressing today, having had a couple of weeks of sunshine, that it's drizzling outside and people are probably feeling whatever. But actually, if you look at the background to the situation at the moment, there is an enormous amount of pent-up demand, and the guys you've heard talking have very much backed that up, that there's the evidence that people are inquiring, making inquiries. It wouldn't surprise me if you see 5-year mortgages at below 1% at some point in the next sort of month or two. Now, that really tells you how messed up things are in the long term, but if you're in the market to buy something, it is a great time to be doing that. And I just think that most people, if they're talking to their customers, they need to understand that if things are difficult, you sell for less, you buy for less. You know, the market is sort of, it moves along. It's people often just really try and overthink what's going on. And I think it's really possible for agents at the moment to give messages out which aren't quite as, don't watch the news too much. I think someone mentioned Sky News. Don't watch the news too much. That'll depress you. Okay, so we're at 11:15 now. Ian, I think it might be time perhaps to move across. We've obviously got some questions from people who came to us before the webinar started, and it might be interesting to talk to one or two of them. But have you got any immediate questions that you'd like to put to the panel now that have been coming in?
Yeah, I've got one that's coming from Louis Ricketts on the very initial subject we were talking about, where Peter Rollings was touching upon getting the very best people. And they're saying, or Louis is saying, look, as a strong independent that's the market leader, is it risky for me to be paying these people even more money when I'm already the market leader? Do I still need to go down the same route? Should he be paying the big salaries shortly after lockdown when cash might be a little bit tight? So he's asking advice as an independent individual, one office business, and obviously that's diverted to all the panel that are estate agents. He's asking all of the estate agents what their thoughts on that are.
Can I have a quick crack at that? It's a really good question. It depends, I suppose, on how much market share he has in his local area. If it's anything sort of 10-15%, then I still think there's, obviously 85% to go for. I'm not saying we should pay the best people more. I'm saying we should give them the opportunity to earn more. And there's a big difference there. I think you can pay them more in the initial setup, which is this debit credit thing, which they pay back when they do deals. But I think the days are, well, for a certain type of individual you want to attract to your business. If you're going to make them work from 8:30 till 6:30, 7 o'clock, 5 days a week and every other Saturday, you're not going to get those people. I think for a certain type of person, those days are gone. But if you're paying them 45, 50% on deals they bring in, they'll come in on a Sunday morning. They'll come in at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, because it is their business. I used to say at M&P and at Foxtons, it's like running your business within my business. You are the business owner. And if you're paid a serious amount of commission as opposed to 10 or 15%, which anyway, if you're paid a serious amount of commission, then you are going to go the extra mile, and because of it, you're going to attract the very best people. And if they don't go the extra mile and they don't earn the money, they leave, which is a good thing.
Yeah, plenty of passion there from Peter as usual. You can see why he got to where he got to. Ian, yeah.
One other question. It came in quite early, but I knew it would come up, and that is Peter Lawrence was asking. He'd like to understand more about how the debit and credit works. He's heard the term, but would like to know a little bit more about what that actually
Well, can I make a suggestion, Ian, without sounding rude to this? Why don't we put that on the message we send out, or we could be here, because we've got a lot of questions here from people who registered beforehand, and I think it's a very relevant question. I saw that very early on, but some of these guys were great in sending us questions before this all started. So let's put one or two of these to the panel and see. Let's pick something here. Where should we look to recruit new people? That's, who's that? Richard Powell from Ryder Dutton. Where should we look to recruit new people? Well, I think that's an encouraging question, frankly, because obviously a lot of people are thinking about perhaps the opposite. So where does one look to recruit new people? Who wants to have a go at that? Lee.
Can I have a stab? So I think this answers that question and the previous one. I think lots of people will look to the market leaders, and they'll look to poach from the market leaders. So that's exactly why the market leaders should be looking at their deals. They should be thinking about their people. And then for me, it's about understanding where your opportunity to differentiate your customer offering can be amplified and accelerated in probably the biggest period of accelerated digital uptake that will exist for a very long time, certainly ever previously. But just having these kind of meetings on Zoom, this wouldn't have existed 6 weeks ago, but has been pretty much the norm for everybody that's connected within an agency over the last month or so. So how do you recruit people that will add value to the journeys that you're going to create, and find people that are absolutely top quartile, best in class, passionate? Because that's when you see good quality agents, you can tell them straight away whether they've been an agency or they're
But as you said, Lee, people have got to work out what journey they want to make before they do that. And I know that's what you were doing. Ian, sorry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think recruitment should, where you look is everywhere. And I think recruitment is a permanent process in COVID-19. And what I mean by that is it's not do an interview, decide whether they're suitable or not, and offer a job. I think the caliber of people that we're talking about bringing into the industry are going to have to be smoothed, dated, and prospected, just like you prospect for a landlord or a vendor to sell with you. I think it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
You go to Australia, they have entire teams of people trying to tempt the best talent from one franchise to another. You know, and I think that will start to take place here. I think you need a talent pool in every single business. You need a talent pool of all the people you'd like to employ, and slowly but surely go after them and nurture them.
Yeah, well, here's a question that was clearly planted by Martin before we started. Do you think virtual viewing will ever be as effective at getting commitment from a buyer as a physical inspection? I think that is quite a valid question at the moment. Susanna, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sure. Just in terms of what I was saying earlier, I've interviewed a number of our clients that are doing online market appraisals at the moment and are getting that commitment at the same rate on site. So absolutely. I think a number of it will turn into a bit of a hybrid, like I say, where you do the market appraisal online as an initial kind of build relationship, share stats and figures, and then move to an on-site later with a bit more commitment. So I do actually think it's more than possible. It already is happening.
Does anyone else have a view as to the, I mean, I've always viewed the smart viewings and the 360 tours as a way of qualifying buyers better, so you end up perhaps with fewer physical viewings. And I do think the whole physical viewing thing, having staff out of the office, we all know that being an agent, it's one of the things you love. Is if you're a new agent, getting in the car, you know, have a fag, cup of coffee, drive off, go and see something. It's what everybody loves, but it's a very, very time consuming, not necessarily the most efficient bit of the process. So does anybody else have an opinion about the other end of it? Susanna's just talked about the valuation, the virtual viewing, but I completely get that. In terms of the other end of it, are people ever going to buy properties just from a virtual viewing?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I think that's great. No, I mean, I really do think
timing, Simon.
I think that's one of the great unknowns at the moment, is exactly what people will do. I still think it's a heart rather than a head thing. You know, my view always when I was looking at a property.
I agree. So look, my yes is I think people will make the decisions, but fundamentally it will be a qualification process by and large for both the agent and the buyer. So most people will be using it to work out whether it's worth a physical.
No, I think that's fair enough, and we'd love to engage in that conversation a bit more deeply. Ian, anything else coming in on Facebook Live? Because I can't see those. Anything else you want to bring up from there? You're muted still, Ian, just for the record.
Second. Facebook Live, no, but there is one that I think is worth just a quick discussion, which is, would now be a good time to expand our business by adding further branches or buying lettings books, etc.? If so, would it be better to consider a cold start or purchase of an existing business?
Well, I think that's a very good point, and I think it's one of those ones where we've all had experience of being in business and knowing when the best time to do it is. But do agents at the moment, if you've got enough cash, that's great. If you haven't, could be a bit difficult. Kevin, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, on my view, and Ian will sort of back me up on this, with Dale, with us guys at Romans, you know, he wouldn't open another office until he used the analogy, squeeze the lemon. So unless you've got enough market share in lettings, land, new homes, and all the rest of it in a market town, we wouldn't have gone anywhere else, Ian, would we?
No, but it's a good question. It's a good question. Is it the methodology where everyone else is selling, you're buying? You know, I know, Peter, I think you were keen to say something there, and I know you're certainly someone who's acquired and then sold. So.
Well, exactly. I mean, we started acquiring. I suppose it depends on the strength of your brand, because when we bought Marsh & Parsons, obviously a very great brand, and we bought 2 or 3 others, existing businesses, and obviously we amalgamated them into the Marsh & Parsons setup, so we lost the brand. So it depends how much you're paying for the brand and for the business. I would say if your competitor has the A1 site in the town that you want to be in, then that's worth something. But if you're just going to change the brand immediately to your brand, then you've got to be very careful how much you pay for it. And again, in London, if you're buying a lettings book, lettings books I think are very dangerous in London, because the standard thing with lettings is in London is you go to 2 or 3 agents and she who lets it gets the deal. So you can lose that lettings book very, very quickly. So outside London, probably.
I think one of the questions that people are asking a lot outside this, and obviously a lot of you will have seen Josh Rayner's 6,500 people answering questions saying a third of people would go and become self-employed and do their own thing at the moment. Personally, I think the self-employed model certainly has legs, but I still worry sometimes about some of these bigger brands in terms of the way they market the brands to give the people the leads. But I still think that, do people think that this new methodology, the Keller Williams style model, does that have legs, do you think, Simon?
I think that in the long term, it has legs if we're talking about higher quality staff taking responsibility for their own businesses within your business. That said, I do feel that COVID, to an extent, has taken the legs away from that. Because there are a lot of people who, if they were self-employed, earning more than 6,000, will 90 week rather being furloughed. So I think it's made a lot of people stop and think as to whether or not that model gives them any support, and I think that's what they're looking for. Brand a lot.
Has anybody else got an opinion on that? It's clearly a topic for the moment, and given the amount of abilities or the amount of abilities that the people sitting on this panel can give in terms of backup for people working on their own. Ian, opinion?
There's a lot, if you go into the forums, there's a lot of talk about self-employed, employed, upfront, not upfront, high street, not high street. I actually believe all those models have an opportunity to exist and be successful if they have the right systems and processes and the right people. I'm not sure the model is the key thing. I think the owner has to decide what type of business they want. I think they have to decide what type of culture they want, and I think they have to bleed getting that. But if they put poor people into a whatever system, it won't work. If they put great people into whatever business model and system, it will work. I think there's a place for all of the models, frankly. But there isn't a place for mediocrity.
No, and I think that's going to be the case going forward, where you've particularly got lower transactional volumes, and it's going to take people time to build their pipelines up. They're going to have to look at exactly what they're going to do. And I think that's partly why we're here as the ICG and doing this webinar, is to help you guys out there think about what you can do to build your pipelines. There really are some great pieces of tech out there, and the whole point of the exercise with the ICG is to give you access to them. Certainly, even when I was at D&G, and one or two of you, I'm sure, still have the processes, Simon, Assad, you still have people traipsing in front of you, offering you prop tech solutions, or they're saying it's going to do this, going to do that. The ICG is a really good place to go and get some help with that. And we've managed to maintain the audience here really well. So thank you very much for listening. If you look around the room here, there are some great solutions. And some of the questions coming in have been very much sort of new homes focused. So Kevin, hopefully you'll get some attention after this, because of course, for a lot of people, they've suddenly realized easy target is the wrong word, but when the people you need to target in this environment on your buying and selling side is the people who have to sell. And people who own new homes or are selling new homes don't have the luxury often of hanging on to them. And in terms of staffing and what you do, there are unparalleled opportunities at the moment in terms of the people who can offer you help with the marketing, recruiting the right people. You've had some great experience here in the room, and I'd really like to say a massive thank you. Just to remind you, I don't always look like this, like a criminal. I've just raised $2.5 grand for the NHS, so please don't judge me by my haircut, but feel free to judge everybody else on their haircut. Okay, very important you know that. So it's now 12 o'clock. We've had our hour. This webinar has been recorded. It will be sent out to you, and it will have the answers to some of the questions that perhaps you asked and didn't see answered or hear answered on the webinars. So I'd like to say a big thank you to all of you for coming on. I hope you all feel you got your pennyworth worth in, and that you as listeners and watchers felt that you got a little bit more depth in some of the questions you were asking than perhaps was the last time. To remind you, we'll be doing these every couple of weeks. There'll be different topics, different people giving you different opinions at different stages of the journey, but all of them hopefully with good agents giving insight and the best of the prop tech industry giving you help on the tech side. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.